Hello. Can I give you a very, very warm welcome to my YouTube channel? You're most welcome. The first thing I want to point out is that it's quite a varied channel. There are all sorts of different headings. So if you go and have a look at the playlist, you'll see a huge variety of different topics that I cover. And I've got some on a sheet here I'm going to try and show you quickly. But you see, first of all, there's comedy, and these are often anecdotal stories. There's one, how terrible I am, how accident prone I am. And there's another one about me being half French and what it was like, quite funny. I've recently put a YouTube on about my experiences during the pandemic. When I was working as a courier during the early days, and I really try and make that funny. Weird times, during the pandemic. So do have a look at that one. The accident prone one is hilarious, really funny. Then I have a go. I've written some short stories. These have never been published anywhere, but I really put my heart and soul into these short stories. Here they are. I'll show you at the bottom here some short stories, and there's a whole variety of them. I think there's 5. Again, some anecdotal stories. One, when I started out when I was about 19, I worked in a restaurant in Baker Street, and that's where the story Did Sherlock Holmes Live Here come. True story this was, but I've made it into a fictional short story. There's one which I co-wrote with a friend called Revolving Door, and he reads the story. So I call these fast card stories, and you see me nearly singeing myself next to a fire every time I read these stories. There's one which is based on a true story that happened to my dad when he was training to fly for the RAF during the war, and this one's called Flight into Madness, which is quite scary. And then some French stories, because I have lived in France, one relating to an elderly lady who used to live next to my dad, and one about an elderly aunt who used to go and feed cats, stray cats in Paris. So do have a look at those. My other object really in doing my YouTube channel was to promote a book that I've written, and it's called You the Sentencer, and I quite like it really. I would do because I wrote it, and I think it's quite nicely laid out. It quite lots of clear space, easy to read. And it's not one that you're going to have to start at the beginning front cover and read like that. You can just, if you read the introduction, it explains the book, and then you can go to the contents and pick whatever chapter is of interest to you. So it's very much a book that you can pick up and put down. And the other point I want to make is very, very unusual, this book, in that it's incredibly interactive. The first section is, I've scripted an interview with some offenders, and you have to make your own assessment of the interview. And most importantly, I put the victim's account of what happened. And these obviously don't always compare with the offender's account. And you have to see what's going on. And I'll let you work that out for yourself. Then I have some court reports, so based on real court reports. So here's one, can you see? And these are based on real court reports, and it goes through the offence and the person's background, and I leave it to you to decide how you're going to sentence somebody. Now, there's several reasons why I've done this. They're all lots and lots of court reports here. One is to show that offenders come from all walks of life, that there seems to be a trend. I'm trying to get people to think about, rather than just sending everybody to prison, I'm trying to get people to think about what can we do as a society to stop people becoming offenders. particularly I'm interested in people's life stories and what happened in their childhoods through to adulthood. And if you read that, I think society really has got some strategies that it could deploy, or things that we can improve to stop people becoming offenders in the first place. Because over the last few years or so, over the last 10 years or so, lots of people have thought, oh, we're too soft in this country, we're not hard enough on crime, we need to send more people to prison. But actually, to be honest with you, what really has happened is, yes, people have got sentenced. It's called sentence inflation. More people have been sentenced to prison, more people have been sentenced longer to prison, and I don't think it's had an impact on crime and the causes of crime, which is what I'm talking about. And the community penalties that exist, that were deployed, some of them as an alternative to custody, have been given out for lesser and lesser offences. So all of it's moved up. And the prisons and probation service have had less money and more people to deal with. And in particular, people coming out of prison as well. And that's been very, very difficult. And there's a video I talk about releases from prison and my concerns about this, because I think it's not working well. So do have a look. And the book is brilliant. And it's very interactive, because after each report, all sorts of questions are there. Like, how would you sentence? Why do you think this person offended? What could be done to stop this person offending? And at the very end are what I call difficult dilemmas, moral dilemmas, moral dilemmas, where I ask you to think about, there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but I ask you to think about what would you do in that particular situation. And I actually do some YouTubes on the subject, and I call them difficult dilemmas. So do have a look at those and do write in what you think. And I'm very keen for my channel to be interactive and for you to contribute and put your ideas in. So some of the chapters, there's one about the police, and there's quite a scandal in there, so do look out for that. But there's a massive scandal about the police that's revealed in my book. Also, there's a chapter about politicians, and during the expenses crisis, believe me, during the expenses crisis, you're more likely to come into contact with a criminal in the Houses of Parliament than you were in your local high street, statistically. Somebody worked this out. How shocking was that? So there's a chapter about, there's one about the post office, and indeed the lady on the front was a victim. She was one of these people caught up in the post office thing, an elderly lady in her 60s, and she was prosecuted, I feel wrongly, by the post office. And there she is sitting in the probation waiting room, and you see lots of flowers because she's dreaming about flowers. And I actually got her to do a floristry course, and that went very well. But what didn't go well was one day she came in to the probation office, accidentally left her handbag under the chair, and about 10 minutes into the interview with me, she realised. We rushed back, handbag had gone. We looked at the CCTV camera and saw who'd done it, and we reported it to the police, but they took no action. Now, you know, how disgraceful was that? And so read about that in my book, but there are all sorts of interesting stories and also some YouTubes about them. Now, lots of discussion about probation. So in addition to the cases that are in the book, I also give some verbally, and I make YouTubes of them. So there's a very interesting case of a hoax bomb, bomb threat, a bomb hoax. There's I call it a very serious domestic burglary and robbery, probably one of the most serious offenders I've ever met. And I felt that he was extremely dangerous, this man. And then there's some people who There's a YouTube about a guy who damaged some wing mirrors. I really don't know why he was prosecuted. So you've got various extremes. And I also talk about what it's like to be a probation officer and some of the frustrations and some of the things that go wrong. And I don't think people have been pointing this out enough. But for example, often in my day, back in the 1990s and the early noughties, the record of previous convictions were incorrect in my area. And also we didn't get the full pack of statements from the victim and the prosecution all the time, which I thought was terrible because the only account you've got is that of the offender, which is not good enough. So lots of frustration. And also there's a bit of humour in my book. So there we are. So there's discussion about probation. There's a whole section of difficult dilemmas. There's a heading about what is wrong with probation, concern over prison releases, about how to become a probation officer and what my experience was, how people come from all walks of life, and how community service has been rebounded about 4 or 5 times, trying to promote it as an alternative to custody, and it's failed. Finally, you'll see here, I'm very interested in historical things. And can you see that there's probably the smallest prison in the UK? This is a very interesting account. Near me where I live, there's an old workhouse. And I did research into it and I found out what it was like to be in a workhouse. So, really, really scary. So finally, I came up with the idea of this Moan for the day. And I quite enjoyed doing that. And this Moan for the day really has catapulted my numbers of views and people subscribing to my channel. I made the comment that many people seem quite miserable in my area, one area where I live. And I've done 2 YouTubes about it. One saying, and in that I talk about how some professionals seem quite poor in people's skills and miserable as well. But it worries me, and I'm really keen that as a society we look out for each other. We are friendly towards each other. We're polite and supportive towards each other, and that's what I'm advocating really. So you'll see that there's 2 YouTubes about is the UK miserable, first one, and my way is I feel that the answer for me is that we do try and be community spirited and put ourselves out a bit. Anyway, I did one about I don't particularly like SUVs, but if you've got any other topics you would like me to cover in the Moan today, do write in and put them forward. So there we are. But do have a look at the comedy ones. I do have a sense of humour, and some people have been sending in some really good jokes, so thank you for them. Thank you for all the wonderful contributions I've been getting, and thank you for looking in and subscribing to my channel. I'm really, really grateful. But first of all, do look at all the playlists, because really it's my way of giving chapters of all the different things that I do. So don't forget you got comedy, you got real short stories that I've written, you got probation topics that are very much related to my book, and do have a look at the book on Amazon. And I recommend it. It's not one that I personally struggled. It's not an academic book. I'm not an academic. It's a very, very straightforward read. And it's one that you can pick up and you can read in different orders, chapter 10 and then chapter 1 if you want. It doesn't matter, okay? So just read what's interesting you. And what I particularly like is it's very nicely set out in a decent sized print and quite clear, and you got blank space and that. So, it's not like, it's interactive. That's very, very important. So, and I'd like this channel to be interactive. So all the very best now. Thank you so much for looking in, and I wish you a lovely day or evening or wherever you're looking, but all the very, very best to you. Cheers now. Bye-bye.